What's up? It's Ian Koniak, and today we're going to talk about grit and why grit is the key to developing mastery in sales over a long-term period. You see, most people don't have true grit. Most people in sales are grinding, and there's a major difference between grit and grinding. And today I'm going to walk you through what those differences are and why specifically it's important to make sure that you are a person with grit versus a person who is grinding. So before I get in, I'm going to share the definition of grit. And this came from Daniel Pink, who wrote the book Drive. He also wrote the book To Sell is Human. And he defines grit as perseverance and passion towards long-term goals. Okay? So the big difference between grit and grind is that grit is an identity. It is who you are. You are a person with grit. You are a person who perseveres and you show up with passion towards long-term goals. Whereas grinding is chasing an outcome. One is who you are. The other is what you're trying to accomplish. If you don't have long-term goals, and you don't know where you're going, you're going to have to grind every day. And what grinding does is it leads to burnout. It leads to stress. It leads to anxiety. Whereas grit, it actually is sustainable. So grit is a matter of long-term, and grinding is short-term. I just ran a marathon, my first marathon, a few weeks ago. And afterwards, I signed up for another marathon. Why? Because I want my identity to be a person who is an endurance athlete. That is grit. Whereas grinding would be running one marathon. My goal is to check the box, to have a bucket list of running a marathon, and I'm never going to do that again because that was really hard. Okay? So with grit, it's always hard, okay? It's always uncomfortable. It's always uncomfortable. That's just you live in a state of discomfort because that's what gritty people are doing constantly. If they feel comfortable, they know that that's the danger zone. Where the grinding is a temporarily uncomfortable. Okay? So with grit, you're always uncomfortable. And that might sound bad, but it's actually a really, really good thing. Because when you're uncomfortable, you're always challenging yourself and you're able to do difficult things because that's your normal. Versus grinding, it's just temporary, and then you go back to your lower state of energy, your lower state of effort. Okay? So the key to grit versus grinding is to make sure that you're always in a state where you're challenging yourself. That is the key. The other thing is that this is consistent. In other words, grit is how you show up every day and every week, whereas grinding is inconsistent. So someone who is grinding is going to be all in for a short period of time, for short stints, and then all out. In other words, they have two gears that they're running in. They're running in normal, and then they're running on full speed. Whereas grit is consistently going, but you're not in the speed of burnout. You're just consistently doing hard things every day. And that's what grit is. It's persistence in passion towards your long-term goals. You're not looking at the short term, okay? That's a key. The other thing is grit. You are doing it for yourself. You're developing this for yourself and for yourself only. Whereas grinding, it's for other people. You're trying to hit your quota so you can prove to others you can do it. You can do it for your boss or for your company. Whereas if it's grit, this is for me. It's not for anyone else. It's only for me. That is key. So the grit is a stop-start. The grind is a stop-start, whereas the grit is continuous. You're always working and you're doing it for yourself. Now let's talk about the pace of grit versus grind. The pace of grit versus grind is slow and steady. Slow and steady. Grit means consistently showing up, whereas grinding is hustle. Hustle. It's the old hare and the tortoise. The tortoise is slow and steady going along. The hare runs quick, takes a nap. Someone told me 2 stories. It was a story of an expedition to the North Pole. And the first group decided that they were going to do 30 miles a day, every single day, no matter what. And it was really hard. They continued to push themselves. And when it was easy and when it was in good weather out, they restrained themselves. They didn't want to go too hard. Well, the second group decided when it was really, really sunny out, when it was great out, they would actually do 60 miles. And when it was winter and when it was snowy and they couldn't, like the winds were unbearable, they would stop and bunker down for a couple days. Well, what do you think happened? The group that took consistent action and did the 30 miles every day arrived 30 days before anyone else. And the group that stopped and started actually perished 10 days before they were supposed to arrive. You see, the pace of slow and steady and showing up consistently always wins. That's grit versus go hard, stop hard. Go hard, stop hard. This is a recipe. Grinding is a recipe for burnout. And grit, on the other hand, is sustainable. So when you want to master something, when you want to master sales, it takes 10 years. 10 years. I read the book Mastery too. And when you do an apprenticeship, I was in sales 19 years doing B2B tech sales. I didn't crack 7 figures until I think I was year 14 or 15. And then it was that was my new standard. And that became what I was going to do every year because I crossed that barrier, but it took a while to get there. If you want to master sales, if you want to make 7 figures, if you want to master your health, if you want to master your relationships, the path is not go hard and then stop. It's develop an identity of someone who shows up consistently every day when the weather's good and when the weather's bad, when the seasons are, dark or when the seasons are bright. You continue to show up. You don't stop and start and stop and start. If you want to master sales or business or anything in life, you need to develop your grit. And if you need help doing this, you know exactly where to find me. DM me on LinkedIn. Join the waitlist for my coaching program. This is the stuff we cover because you don't want to be here or else you're going to feel like you're on the edge of burnout all the time. And you're going to know it's not sustainable because it's not sustainable. Grit is an identity. Grinding is temporary. Develop your grit. Watch your results skyrocket. I'm Ian Koniak. Thanks for listening today.